you know, I went to my shop every morning before work. I was in my shop every night after work. And she was the one who was really like, no, you should do this. And she actually kept telling me in 2020, like, you got to quit your job. And I was like, I don't know yet. And the thing about it was, you know, I was making at that point as a journeyman lineman 120 grand a year. I had benefits, paid vacation, and it felt selfish to quit my job to chase a dream that was really a huge risk. And it was her saying like, hey, if it doesn't work out, we'll figure it out. And man, that was, I actually quit my job December 31st of 2020, right in the middle of COVID. And I drove home in the car and I was literally like sick to my stomach. Like, what in the hell did you just do? So,
you know, but it's that risk, you know, a couple of things there, you know, one, having someone that supports you, because I'm sure there were a ton of doubts, and then it was just that gentle nudge, you know what I mean? Or, you know, taking that 18, 20 grand and just pouring it into the vision and what you guys saw. I absolutely love that. And I think it's one of those things that even when you're doubting yourself, even when, you know, times get tough or you're wondering, what the hell did I do? Just keep pushing forward. Don't lose that vision.
Yeah, and the other thing I tell people, they see my story and they're like, oh, I need to quit my job and start, you know, my barbecue business, or quit my job and start, you know, making bronze art or whatever it is. And I'm like, man, you should be doing it now, before work and after work, and on Saturday and on Sunday. Like, I didn't just go quit my job. I cut the first prototypes for Montana Knife Company in 2019. You know, I actually made the very first prototypes in like 2013. And then I waited years before I actually really cut the actual prototypes. But man, when you want to chase your dream, a lot of times it's your day job that actually makes it possible. But it means you're going to sleep less. You're going to go to less football games. You're going to go to the bar less. You're gonna have to work on your passion and your dream outside of work, and then get to a point where you literally cannot physically do both at the same time.
And if you aren't willing to make that sacrifice of cutting down on the football games, cutting down on the bar time, you know, bowling league, that kind of bullshit, then this probably isn't made for you, because you're going to end up making much bigger sacrifices than that to keep this ball rolling if it takes off, I would say.
Yeah. Brandon, my business partner, you know, I met him in the spring of 2020, and you know, he was actually a photographer. He took some photos, and then he was like, hey, I can build you a website. And I was like, all right. So he built me a website in July, and then I started really realizing his ability and his talents in the marketing side. And by September, I told my wife, I said, I can't afford to pay him to do what I need him to do. Like, we were going to be running out of money if I did. So I offered him partnership in the company. And, you know, and I think I don't know if I would have made that decision in my 20s. I think the arrogant side of me would have been like, I can do it all. And I recognized my deficiencies and his value, and said, you know, if we're going to grow this thing into a big company and I only own, you know, 50-60% of it, that's going to be better than failing with 100%. And so, you know, we and then Brandon and I, when I quit my job, the whole first 6 months of 2021, neither one of us took a paycheck. So you want to talk about sacrifice? I mean, I actually just had Brandon on my podcast, and I never knew this, but it's funny. He said when I quit my job January 1st of 21, he thought I was crazy. And I'm like, God, I'm glad you didn't say it back then. You were my business partner. But he was doing a side gig marketing, kind of growing his marketing company. And he still had some money coming in 21 where I didn't. I quit. I was cold turkey. And he was like, holy shit, here we go. And it was a funny story about why I actually quit. There in December, I got a message on my Instagram from Thomas Rhett. And he's like, hey, I'm going to be skiing in Montana. I'd like to maybe meet up and get a knife. Well, he's about 4 hours from here down at Big Sky Resort. And I went to my boss and I was like, hey, I need December 31st off. And he's like, well, you're out of vacation. And I was like, yeah, well, my vacation resets the next day. I have a month of vacation. And he's like, yeah, you're out of vacation. So we had this talk back and forth, and I got to December 30th and I was like, hey, I need tomorrow off. And he's like, in corporate thing, right? Like, no, you're out of vacation. And I'm like, well, can't we trade like a day, next week or whatever it is? And he's like, nope. And I was like, all right, well, then I'll be done at noon. And I quit. And
Yes.
and Thomas Retton had no idea that I literally quit my job to go meet up with him, because it was one of those deals at that point. I wasn't sure what that would lead to. And as it turns out, not much of anything really in that particular, we had a nice conversation. But the point is like, at a certain point, I was kind of back against the wall and had to make the decision.
Well, and also knowing in the back of your mind, if you do this right, only more of these opportunities are going to come up that's going to limit you to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Yep, exactly. And I was having those opportunities that I was passing up, and then, they kept coming up. Even like I think we met at that Traeger event that you guys did, that big Traeger event down in Salt Lake. And things like that I wouldn't have been able to go to with my day job. Yep. I think that was in 2021, spring of 2021.
Yeah, it sure was.
And that's when I was in the middle of not taking paychecks. But events like that I just wouldn't have been able to do. And so I started jumping then at every opportunity that I could.
Absolutely. And, and you have to, you've jumped off, you've made that jump. So now you got to be 110% into this. And, the whole reason you left was to have more opportunity, and you got to make the most of it when you get it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the best things that I have done is really admitting, frankly, I'm pretty deficient in about every fucking area. So I realize that there are people out there. Not sure if you can cuss on this podcast.
Yes,
sorry.
we can.
But also I think being 42 years old at this point, and 40 back then, you realize like, okay, I'm not God's gift to this planet, but there are people that have expertise in certain areas that we can lean on.
Absolutely.
And my big thing was I even leaned on job shops around the country. Like, these knives are made in America. I never considered for a second making our knives or any of the parts in China.